Hello, hello, Victor
Hello.
Ramon. Good to have you here. All right, let's give it a minute to make sure we have enough time for guests to join, and then we can start. It's going to be a very insightful session. I'm excited. All right. Well, let's kick it off and get started. So I see that we have many new joiners during this session, so I wanted to take an opportunity and introduce a little bit what we do at Startup Dials, just to give a bit of context. So we primarily work with the consumer tech startups, and mostly those that are outside of the United States and looking to launch and grow in the US market. So think Asian and European brands, particularly those that don't have US team on the ground, and they have very little to non-experience with the understanding the US landscape as well as the consumers. So we help them essentially avoid those costly mistakes of throwing spaghetti on the wall, and that includes programs like customer journey mapping, voice of customer, and more. But those are typically like the services that are relevant for today's event. So today we have Ramon, the founder of HumanX Insights, who will share his insights on customer research, right? And why is it important? So we're talking about potentially very costly mistakes that many hardware founders do, and the thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars mistake. So what is fascinating is that founders, they're ready to spend three, four, $500,000 on product development, but they're not very often not willing to invest into actually knowing their customers and knowing whether whatever it is that they're developing makes sense, right, and is going to sell. So many of those startup founders, they validate their ideas through gut feeling, often based on some customer feedback or product reviews that they're getting, otherwise competitor reviews and Reddit threads. But there are so many unknowns, right, of how will customers react once you launch your physical product, whether they're actually going to be using it or they're going to put it back into the closet. So any type of research, surveys, anything around knowing your customer is extremely helpful on knowing whether you're building your next Instapot or a Juicero, which was a complete flop and went out of the market. So some of the common blockers of why startup founders are not doing the research is actually not knowing where to find the respondents. They don't know how to pick them, to make sure that they're getting representative information from those insights that would be relevant to their customer segment that they're building the product for. And of course, there's a cost, right, that's associated with it, which often scares away startups. So, Victor, you and Ramon, you guys go a long way, right?
Well, Ramon has an amazing background in all things survey research, starting from his work at Nielsen Companies and then on to Walmart headquarters and Sam's Club and then on to Meta and other things. He's seen how very large companies validate products before they hit the shelves. And more importantly, he knows how to adapt these frameworks for startups. So Ramon is going to answer these questions for you about how you can know your customers through research. Ramon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, Anna. It's really, really a pleasure to be this morning here. I can't wait. I'm super excited with the audience today, and I hope I can help and give some specific and actionable ideas that people can apply today. So thank you for the invitation.
I am sure you will. Ramon, let's start with some framework. Hardware founders are different from SaaS founders. They can't push an update to a hardware product necessarily, right? So when they're looking at a $200,000 plus tooling investment, how should founders think about research strategy? How do you decide between qualitative and quantitative research. Is there a good way? I guess explain the difference. There's a sound foundation, and what's the difference between quant and qual? And is there a best practice for what do you do first, second? How do you use them together?
Wow, it's a lot of questions there, but let me try to go through answering them. And I was just thinking about qualitative. How do you explain qualitative? So I'll try to do something. I hope I don't fluke here, but if any of you ears can just open your phone, grab your phone, open your photo app, and just pick a picture, whatever you want. Okay. So I'm gonna give you guys 5 seconds to see how fast are you to find that out. Okay.
All right. We're gonna.
So while you're doing that, I want you to feel something, right? What do you feel about that picture that you are just watching or just seeing? And then my question to you is like, if I tell you that that picture is equivalent to a freezer, like one of those bulky white things that American families have in their garage, would you believe me?
I want to say no.
Not really. Right. Ramon, what does a freezer has to do with this picture I just see from my puppy or from my daughter or from my mom or from this wonderful trip to Valencia that I just did last week? So let me explain to you how these things are connected, and these come from qualitative research, right? So when I was with Sam's Club, we have to ask the Sam's Club members, and for those of you that do not live in the US, think about Sam's Club as a big chain of stores that you pay a membership and you can come and buy what it's bulk, right? You buy toilet paper by bulk, like 20 rolls of toilet paper, or like 5 pounds or 5 kilograms of steak. I mean, bulky things. So when we were doing research on why people would buy a freezer, especially for Sam's Club, we asked, well, why would you buy a freezer, right? We asked the moms in this qualitative setting. And obviously the first reason is like, well, because I want to freeze all these groceries. And if we would have just stopped there, we would say, okay, freezers are important because you keep a lot of food there. But in qualitative, you don't stop that on the first why. This is what we call the 5 whys, right? So you ask further. So then we ask, well, okay, why would you stock more groceries here, right? And then the answer was, well, because I want to save money, right, and time, and I want to have a lot of things, everything I need. Okay, perfect. No, but continue going, right? But why do you need to have all these to be in stock all the time? And then the moms were saying, well, because I want to always be in stock, so when my kids are here and inviting their friends, there's always food at home, right? And then we probe again, right? But why do you want to always be, we can stock for all your kids and their friends and their neighbors? And you know what was the answer? They said, because those are the memories I build in the future. I want my kids, when they grow, to see that at home we always host their friends and they have the best time playing soccer or football or just swimming. So that's a connection, right, of a freezer with a memory. So what I'm going with this is qualitative is going to help us understand those deep reasons why we want, or why a potential customer is going to buy our product, right? If you were thinking about any hardware product, whatever new or standard, like a coffee maker or anything else, well, is it only to make coffee? Why is the reason at the end someone is going to buy, right? So that's what qualitative is going to help us understand, especially for the group that we care the most. Why are we going to be connecting with them? And then quantitative is like this sound rational thing of, oh, I think people do this, I think people do that, and then we all have opinions about that. So quantitative is going to help us decide who's the right one. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Surveys, I'm going to do 150. I'm probably stepping ahead of some of the questions that you may have later, but it's going to be about a tool that we're going to use when we have to make decisions about prioritizing or deciding who's going to be the target, right? Many times we think, oh, this product is going to be purchased by the young consumer. But then we could find out that the people that love the most were probably moms and pops and or grandparents, right? So that's what quantitative is gonna help us, right? Think about this like this balance between the art of understanding, hypothesizing, and the science of measuring, right? And I'm sure many of you knew that, but the beauty is that these things can go together. And just to, I know it's a long answer to your question, Victor, but as you were
There's a
saying, the
lot of questions.
sequencing, right? Many people say, oh, you always do qualitative first, and then you do quantitative later. And intuitively, well, that makes sense. I may have some hypothesis. Let me just probe and talk to a few, and then I validate. But sometimes you do the opposite. Sometimes you just start with a quick, like, especially when you don't have a clue about anything, you just do a quick survey just to even understand some pieces. And then you go deeper with qualitative, and then you expand with quantitative. But that would be my initial thoughts answering your questions, if that helped, Victor.
Yeah,
Let me know if
that's
I need to
super
go
helpful.
deeper.
I love that example about the picture and how that connected to a freezer. That was a great story, and it illustrates really nicely how you can go very deep into understanding a consumer's mindset and thinking and thought process around a certain product. So now let's talk more about founders of devices who are outside of America, and they want to find out if and how to sell their product to American consumers. What do you advise them? From the get go. What would you say? Hey, I've got this device and I want to find out how to sell it, if it's going to sell, etc.
Well, first, I applaud all of you that have that in your objectives. That's awesome. This is a market that will always welcome creativity, innovation, and will be ready to buy the right product. So, I know we were just talking about qualitative and quantitative research. So let me just give you a little bit more of a broader approach. Just based on your question, Victor, is research or insights is much more than just talking to a few consumers or potential customers or to more customers, right? There is a lot of things that actually we should be doing or thinking as we are exploring coming to a new market, right? And those are usually included in the broader world of insights in the industry, in whatever industry you are, right? So what I would say first is probably sound obvious, but you have to understand industry trends. What is just even think about just basic demographics of a country, right? And then from that you would say, well, what is this industry going? Is this an industry that is growing or it's declining? I'll give you a perfect example. Well, people older than or like me, not of most of the people here, we grew with all these vinyls and records that we used to play music, and of course, all that thing was gone, and then digital versions of music was everything, right? And all those old stuff were just become vintage or good memories that people were having hidden or in a garage. You cannot believe the comeback of all these vinyl, all these physical things, right? So what I'm saying is this is what we have to understand first. How trendy is something coming? How many people potentially are interested, are going to be coming, and sorry about that background, are going to come and be buying your product. So think about first about the industry trends, right? Then the second is going to be, okay, this is a good market, a good industry to go into. Is like, who are the players? Another research we have to do. Who are the competitors? Who seems to be the leader? What are their characteristics? And we need to do research on them. And those could be just searching on the internet or just going through websites and or buying reports, right? Which is more called secondary sources. Then what we also need to understand is how people, I know, Anna, you mentioned the customer journeys, right? So this is where you connect the dots, right? So then I need to start thinking, wow, in this industry, with this competitor, where is people buying because it's going to help you understand, do I go to sell to stores? Do I go to sell directly to consumers? Or do I go to a marketplace platform in eBay or Amazon or Walmart, right? So understanding the channels or the outlets is also going to be important, right? And just I've already cited 3 things before you even start talking to consumers, right? So that's what I would say. Just put that in clear, your industry trends, how's the competition looking? What are potentially where the outlets where people are buying this product? And then you can think on the qualitative and quantitative research to help you then, okay, I want to put my product in front of consumers. I want to start really understanding some of the needs. Your people in R&D may have hypotheses. They said, oh, we'd like to have this feature this way or this feature that way. And that's where your research is going to come to help you define that. Now, just to quickly on that, because I want to be fast on that, is I want you also to think there's also going to be the need to do like testing your product in R&D, testing the communication, how you're going to communicate your idea, and then potentially also testing the packaging. I want to keep the packaging testing as another potential thought for you guys later, because in hardware, packaging could be a huge part of your success. But let me stop there.
So maybe we could go a little bit deeper into the actual tools or like selection of the panel, or how, like, we understand that, okay, we need to know all that information. But if we were to get a little bit more practical and hands-on, right? So tomorrow, let's say I decide that I'm launching a $200 toaster. There's plenty of toasters. I know that most likely it's going to be e-commerce. It's going to be Amazon where I'm going to start. And, further on, I'm going to be knocking on the doors of retailers. But like, because there's obviously so many toasters on the market, how do I make sure that the toaster I'm building will have its niche, find its niche with the US consumer?
Right. So, for example, right, you will definitely have to do some qualitative on your on the features of the toaster, right? I mean, what exactly? I mean, you call it $200 toaster. Let me just think about I think that's going to be I'm going to go with your challenge, right? This is a smart toaster.
It is a smart toaster, right? Ramon. So, it's always smart.
It's a smart toaster, right? So, who do I need to talk to about that, right? So, let's say I'm going to do a quantitative. I really want to be able to put my concept in front of people. So what you will have to do is in quantitative search or look for a supplier that could help you, or a panel, right, that can help you run your research, right? And there's a lot of, because of technology is evolving, now there's a lot of self-service tools, right? There's companies like SurveyMonkey or Zuzi in which you could run your own research, right? These companies provide you with a panel, and then you go and design your questionnaire and put the questionnaire in front of them. But what I think it would be important is you have to ask questions to your suppliers about the quality of their panel, right? Yeah. I mean, how is your panel compromised or made of, right? I'll give you an example. This is a little bit older, but just for you to think about it. Several years ago, when I joined Walmart, we wanted to test a few ideas or products with Walmart customers, and we wanted to do it with lower income families. And we said, okay, research company says, okay, we're going to do all this online surveys for you, and we're going to provide you great results. But at that time, we realized that the low-income families in the U.S. was maybe 15 years ago, around 20% of that target did not use the internet very often. Seriously, you will not believe that, but we're not using it. So we were very concerned that the research was going to be biased towards Walmart shoppers that were internet users, right, instead of the real size of the market. So we have to use a unique panel that was able to do a balance of the online surveys, but also use it with what was called another method, more the phone interviews. So my point with that is you have to use a panel that covers your target in a very well and randomized way. Otherwise, you run the risk of being biased, right? I'm going to give you another tip on that, right, which is Oh, the speed. I want to do this research very fast, right? And then you find a company that says, that's not a problem. I can get you 100 responses in the next 3 hours. Why? So if we finish the survey today, you will get results tomorrow by noon. Okay? We have this great panel. And people are very excited about that, right? And I'm trying to think about your 200 toaster for a second. So think about that is what's going to happen with the people answering the survey that morning? Is that going to be representative of the population, or is that only going to cover people that have a more late, less relaxed morning, maybe retires, and I'm going to really be making a survey or conducting a survey with a panel that does not represent. Maybe my 200 toaster is for busy couples that both work, have busy lives, and the best way to reach them is going to be in the evening, not in the morning, right? So you have to think about that from a quantitative. But okay, let's say that you're able to talk to them, right? So when you start collecting that information about the how interested they are on their toaster, I'm going to go a little bit more deeper into this part. Is when you think about your concept, when you do quantitative research, especially with a big ticket like this, you have to always ask, how is this toaster in comparison to others that you may be, other investment, right? Because it's not a cheap one, right? So my point with that is when you are finishing the way you want to ask the questions in the questionnaire, especially, you have to consider what are going to be some of the trade-offs. And those are more methodological questions of how you do research. But remember, if people are going to be willing to invest $200 is because there may be something else they are not going to be buying, because this is not a cheap toaster. Okay? Let me pause there and see if I'm getting in the right direction, Anna.
Yeah, 100%. But also, like, if you were to talk to like about the quality of the panel as well, right? So I was in that situation, right? We were launching a brand out of Hong Kong to the US market, and we had that challenge. Okay, how do we get feedback from the US consumers? We had nobody there in the United States. What do I do? Where do I go? Also taking into consideration that we did find some of the vendors, but the service fee was, for a startup, was just not affordable.
Yeah. I think, as I said, I would be also very pragmatic here. Okay, so I'm gonna give you this other challenge. When you want to do quantitative, just also think about let's say the 2 or 3 key questions you want to ask. It could be about price positioning, for example. It could be about the concept, but other one could be about features, right? Some of those decisions are more costly than others, right? I'm going to be very pragmatic here. I'm going to probably have some people shaking their heads, but I'm going to be pragmatic here. Sometimes your research that does not require like a high risk, you could go with I'm not going to say a bad quality panel, but a little bit more biased panel, because you could honestly, you just want to rank things. It's not necessarily about a big investment decision. It's just about proving or gut checking something, and that's fine, right? That's what I call sometimes the 60-40 answer, right? I'm willing to get a 60% answer if I'm able to get it cheaper and fast. Right. Other ones are require more investment, and for those, just to be honest, that's where you have to invest probably a little bit more money, right? So, how do you make this possible? Well, when you outline your research plan, you do some investigation about how much these things cost, right? So you should know that a good quality, positioning or pricing test is going to cost you something between, I don't know, $10,000 to $20,000, even more, right? But other answers may require only like a small investment of $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, right? So you have to decide where you want to put your money, and you have to make that decision based on what is the size of the decision, right? If the decision is going to be about the financial one, I would probably need to put a little bit more of quality on that. And I hope you allow me to say this. I think the beauty of organizations like yours or like these forums is in the US, you're going to find a lot of people with great experience that can help startups, right? Navigating those scenarios, and can give you some good advice on what is the route to go.
How about, so we understood, okay, on the quality side, right? That's the, so we need to talk to customers. How about deciding on the price, right? Like we mentioned this $200 toaster, and I can see in the comments to the event, it did spark a conversation around it. So how do I define whether it should be, like whether it's $199 or I don't know, $159, right? Where my margin is going to be lower, but I'm going to be selling more, for example, right? What would be your way of testing for the price?
Yeah, there's several methods that help you with the price. Pricing testing, right? There's methodologies, for example, that allow you to when you start doing your quantitative study, you start saying, hey, this is the super nicest, smartest toaster, the first one that is going to be able to simplify your life in the morning, and it's going to keep all your preference, right? Let's say that you have your concept well written and validated. Then you have methods that can help you start probing prices, right? So for example, you could start with so part of the sample is going to start with $150 price. Other ones are going to start with $100, and then ask the question, right? Again, I'm being a little bit technical here. It's like, would you be willing to buy for $150? Mm-hmm. And we may say, 10% of people say yes, or 90% says no, and then you go, well, what about $130? So the people that start with 100, and they say that half of them says I would buy it. Then you ask them, well, what about 120? What about, so you start laddering up for some and laddering down for another one. Mm-hmm. And then a good research method, which again, companies can do that for you not in that inexpensive way, are going to be able to, at the end, combine the samples and tell you the sensitivity of the price. Say, look, at these different ranges of pricing, the likelihood of people to purchase is this, and it's that. And then you can then optimize and say, well, sounds like perhaps $120 it's the optimal price, mm-hmm. in which I can get a much broader people interested, right, versus the $200. So there is absolutely ways, and it's one of the most important things you have to do, right, to test your pricing.
Ramon, we have a question here from the audience that's saying when founders are designing a product for a need that they don't know if it exists or not, right? They've got an idea, they think maybe this would be something that sells, it meets a need, but they're not sure. How would you recommend that these people, these founders, these designers approach that to find out, is their idea, does it have legs or not?
I love the question. I want to be very pragmatic here, right? I think you now even can start using some AI tools at the beginning, even just to shape up your ideas or how you frame up the problem. I'm gonna suggest something. It's gonna freak many of you guys, right? But I will tell you, I've used it in an occasion recently where I have that question in a very broad way, right? So I ask a couple of AI tools, like, I would like you to think. I know, sorry about that. As a woman, with 4 kids, with only $40,000 of income, that is really stretched on this, and I want you to tell me what are my biggest concerns right now in my life. So it's gonna spill you a few ones, and then you're gonna start at least try to get an idea how people frame their problems, so you can then ask to see how your product can help solve those, right? So then but you need to think through the lens of your consumer, right? And sometimes we think that the best people to test these ideas are with your spouse or with your best friend or your grandma, and yes, but no, right? Believe me, those people are probably going to tell you all the beauties of what you have to offer. So my point is
the mom's test.
Someone neutral, right? Even to be honest, sometimes just be sitting in a coffee place and ask people, hey, I will treat you for a coffee. Would you just sit with me 5-10 minutes? Believe me, you can't imagine how much stuff you can get with very simple actions like that. I hope that helps, Victor.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. We have a session coming up next week from product designer who's going to talk about that topic exclusively. So I wanted to tee it up, start moving in that direction. It was nice we had a question from the audience. how do we wrap this up? Because there's so much information that we haven't covered that we want to cover. We need to invite you back. If you would be so kind at some future date.
Anytime. I guess for me it would be, well, first, for all of you that are here, that's a very first step, right? You're curious about research. Curiosity is very important. And I think as long as you think about research as this conscious aid in your decision making, remember, research is not going to replace your decision making. It's going to help you have an informed decision process for you. And that's a discipline, right? Always ask yourself, can I get some insights first before I move to the next step? And I think that's the way in which I would summarize today. Remember, don't ask your mom, ask your market.
No, that's great. For me, I think the insights we got from you, Ramon, you know who they would be very helpful for? Sales and marketing teams. Because I think sales marketing, oftentimes we understand the importance of the research and survey, but when the time comes to actually pay the bill for the research, you really need to work hard and convince the founder that it's worth the penny. So, well, yeah, thank you very much for the.
My pleasure. I hope everyone has a great evening.
Thank you, Ramon. Appreciate it.